Hello, it's Jen Healy, and I'm back with day 5 of this 30-day Fearless Challenge. And I'm so happy I'm doing this, and I want to thank you for watching for those that are following along. And I am going to continue to encourage you to find your own way of embracing this challenge and joining in so we can all share our experiences and stories. So last night when I was with a client and sharing with her how excited I was about this journey and that I got to couple it with the inventory I've been doing and the reflections that I have been making for the last 25 years of celebrating the anniversary of my company Zen Healing and making some pretty huge life changes. So this has been a great opportunity to blend that with this idea of how can we be more brave every day in our lives? How can we face our fears? How can we embrace our fears and our challenges? So after talking about the spiritual awakening yesterday and the near-death experience the day before, this naturally led up to this conversation that was birthed last night with my client of really understanding that we all have these fears. They might have different flavors, they might have different forms, but we all have some form of these fears that are constant in our lives. I don't think the fear ever goes away. We might have less of it, but to be fearless, like no fear, that hasn't been my experience. I more learn how to be with the fear and allow the fear to be there and still do whatever it is that I am courageous enough to do. So I have a tattoo on my back that I got in the mid-90s, and it says in Tibetan, behind the heart, overcome difficulties with courage. And this was after having my knee surgeries and going through a really hard time while getting my PhD in grad school. Just a whole recalibration and restructuring is how I can see it now. But at the time, it felt like falling apart. So when I got this card 1 year from a friend after my knee surgery that was in Tibetan, and it said, overcome difficulties with courage, I was so inspired by that idea and concept that I went ahead and designed a whole tattoo around it. So the idea of overcoming our difficulties with courage, what a beautiful statement. Courage is of the heart, le coeur, from its origins. And for me, facing those fears and embracing those fears is being with them and feeling them and doing it anyhow. And that does take a lot of courage. And that might look like confidence for some people, but really the same insecurity or self-consciousness or shyness or whatever form or flavor it's coming in is still right there underneath the experience we're having. And we start to build and develop these new muscles, these new spiritual muscles, I call them. So I feel, for example, self-consciousness in certain situations, like doing these videos and what's my hair doing and what's the lighting like, all that stuff. And then I just decide to drop in and I focus with you. I focus on you. But that's still there. That's still running in the background. And I'd have to say, for me, that's always been there. And it might always continue to be there, but it diminishes. It's less. It's being less fueled or fed by building up the fear to make it into something bigger. So I want to talk to you about how I went from severe self-consciousness to self-love during that whole chapter of having a spiritual awakening and having spirit directly communicate with me all day, every day, saying that I'm with you, I've always been with you, I'm here. And so that sense of being alone in this world and not having anyone started to diminish. It didn't go away entirely. I still have those little bouts of loneliness, but in general, I love my solitude and I love my alone time because it allows me to drop in deeper and be present with spirit. And I really love and enjoy that experience. So how did I go from self-consciousness to self-love? It was a process that took many years, but really in that first year when Spirit pretty much just asked me to see myself through their eyes and to just have that feeling of how loved and precious and appreciated I was. I did not grow up that way. That wasn't my experience in the world in general. And so a lot of these habits and personalities really solidified in our childhood experiences where we were taught to act a certain way, or we accepted a certain program or conditioning that might not be our truth or might not be aligned with who we are, but then it goes unchecked or unquestioned and challenged into adulthood. So doing these 30-day challenges helps us really get curious and question, is that who I am? Is this who I want to be? So I had a great conversation last night with my client who was saying, oh, I would never have thought that you experience self-consciousness. And we all think that it's our own separate issue. Like we're the only ones that have that or deal with that, or we tend to compare, like, is mine more extreme than someone else's? Do I have a bigger dose of that or a lesser dose of that? And honestly, it doesn't matter because every person's suffering is so personalized. It's so internalized that even if you think, oh, yours is not that bad, who are we to compare our suffering to another person? So my client and I were joking around about, she was saying how she used to wear really big baggy clothes and was always hiding her body and things like that. And I was sharing the same thing, that my younger self would be mortified by some of the outfits that I wear these days and some of the ways that I play with the artistry and the canvas of the body as dress up for festivals and events and things like that. And it's why I wear glitter every Sunday, so I don't take myself so seriously, but it's also that commitment to Sunday being fun day and celebratory, so that it reminds me that our bodies are a temple, they are a gift. But when I was 24, between that window of 24 and 25, about 25 years ago, because I am turning 50 this year, I made a commitment when I started to feel and experience how Spirit saw me, or the love that they were extending to me, that I was going to love myself no matter what. And this was no small feat, coming from extreme self-loathing and self-deprecation, deprecation. And it was just such a different world that I had taken on and believed a lot of the patterns and the way that I was being treated and the way people were treating themselves. And we just kind of mimic one another like that. So yeah, since 25 years ago, I made that commitment to love myself and treat myself well no matter what, particularly self-talk. So our inner dialogue and our inner self-talk really dictates a lot of how we're feeling about ourselves. So it's not just like putting lotion on or taking a bath to represent loving ourselves and loving our bodies. It's not about the physical form. It's about caring for this being. And it's taken 25 years of unraveling of some of those patterns and catching myself when my inner critic comes out to play, or I start judging myself or others in a negative way. So it's a constant and chronic process, but I thought it would be really important to talk about how to go from self-consciousness to self-love, and that it is a practice of embracing our fears. The fear doesn't go away, and that even with that fear there, whatever the fear is, that we can start making a commitment of loving ourselves more and define what that looks like and what that feels like. And that, of course, bleeds into body image and aging and all the ways that we're influenced by the world around us in our society that are telling us what we should look like to be lovable or who we should be. And we really all have a hefty dose of this that we are dealing with in this lifetime, particularly this era of changing over and having more of a spiritual awareness and consciousness of what our bodies really represent and who we want to be in the world. So I'll go into more detail about that, but I'm going to keep these between 5 and 10 minutes. And this particular episode is about embracing the fear and moving forward anyhow. And I wanted to share with you my particular process of going from extreme self-consciousness to really learning how to love myself. So thank you for listening. Please do share with me how this shows up for you in your world, how it's landing for you. And I was so happy that I took time last night to share that piece with my client and be open and vulnerable enough to share that self-consciousness, because it helps people understand that they're not alone and we really are all in this together. So thank you again for watching. I'll be back tomorrow for the next 30 days, sharing all kinds of topics, every area of my life. So if you have any curiosities, also ask me anything. I'm really open to having this connection with you. Until next time, aloha.